Hey, what's going on everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to take a crack at the read smart tag. Now this is an interesting one. It's all about sort of reading optimally, getting the most out of our reading habits or reading hobbies, which you most likely have if you clicked on this video and whatnot. But this was created by Emily over at Prose and Petticoats, as well as Ruben at Two Readers It May Concern, and Ruben was kind enough to tag me in his video description of his video. Now I've also watched a couple of others, such as Hannah over at Hannah's Books, excuse me, and Curtis Books and Books, and I'll leave a bunch of links to like the ones I've watched and stuff down below. The problem here is pretty much all of them are very eloquent, well articulated, and that's just not something I kind of always adhere to. So we're just gonna like do the best we can and just kind of roll with the punches and see how it goes. And just as a heads up, I probably have a couple heretical views compared to a lot of the other ones, but let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so with question number one, we have, what is your strategy to stay focused and engaged while reading? Now, a lot of people, I noted, and I'm going to guess a lot of people after me are also going to note this, they turn their phones off, they get rid of a lot of electronic distractions, things like that. And I'm going to be the unorthodox person and say, I don't do that. I don't do that. As part of it is like, I'm just so used to it because of work. Like, I have to have my notifications and stuff on when I'm like at work and things, but it's not necessarily so much just that either. It's, you know, if like a friend messages or calls me or whatever, I will just like stop reading and answer them and get back to them or whatever. I just feel like it's honestly like the polite thing to do, and I'd want people to do that for me as well. But then I'll just like go right back to reading. Like, I won't just sit there on my phone and like doom scroll. But I feel like if you're halfway disciplined, you don't need to like turn it off or put it in the other room or anything like that. So that's like a heretical view right off the bat. So that's great. And another one is I'm not always focused per se on actually like reading the content, if that makes sense. Probably not. That probably didn't. I don't even think that made a whole lot of sense. But I will say I am very engaged while reading. And I'm just gonna like give you an example. So a lot of times when I'm reading like my nature stuff, after I read certain things, I will literally just kind of stop reading and then stare into the middle distance, basically, and just contemplate and kind of just reflect on things, whether it's, you know, have I ever observed this kind of thing in the wild? Like, if you know me, I do like a lot of like nature walks and stuff like that. You know, what could I do to like, you know, have like an encounter like that? You know, if it's possible, obviously, like I'm in northern Maine, I can't like just go to like a coral reef or something, but you know, have I ever seen that? What would it be like? It might be easier. Let me grab a book real fast here. For example, this is my latest read. I'm almost done, and it's The Bee, A Natural History, and it's all about different kinds of bees: stingless bees, solitary bees, honeybees, and bumblebees. But you know, when you're just reading about like, you know, the honeybee dance, you know, I'm just kind of visualizing what would it be like to be in the hive actually seeing this, and how does it like really work, and you know, things like that. But just as another example, bumblebees are my favorite kind of bee out of the ones I just described there. But you know, as I read more about them in this book, I will sit there and just kind of think, you know, why is the bumblebee my favorite out of like, you know, the different bees and stuff that I see, you know, and you know, I ended up coming to a conclusion. I like the way that they pollinate through sonification, and I've like seen that before, which is a special way that they pollinate certain plants that only they can do, such as tomatoes, for example, by just buzzing like really loud. And it's just a different way of, while they're in the flower, it's just a different way to like gather the pollen and everything. And I just find it interesting, and like I said, I just kind of reflect on kind of why do I think certain things. You know, how would I get the most out of, you know, these nature things that I'm reading, stuff like that. Doesn't always, like I said, it doesn't always apply to like every book, but I'd say like half my reading is like not natural histories always per se, but you know, nature and life science and biology books and stuff like that, and I find that it works well for me. But I can imagine like sitting there and reflecting and meditating on what you read, no matter whether it's fiction or nonfiction or whatever, can be helpful with engagement with whatever you're reading. Okay, so hopefully question number 2 here will help me kind of explain the focus portion that I didn't really elaborate on the first question. But it's, how does your environment influence your focus, and what can you do to optimize it? So in my household, you know, there's me and my wife, but there's also a 5-year-old, there's 4 animals, there's probably gonna be a 5th one pretty soon. it gets crazy, it gets hectic, it gets, you know, real world. I think that's just like what it is, which means, you know, there's not always like a lot of opportunities for like, you know, big, you know, deep work reading hours, you know, like setting aside, you know, an hour just for like active reading per se with no interruptions and stuff. So I'm pretty used to like, you know, reading with noise, reading with distractions kind of going on. You know, I feel like I got to be halfway aware most of the time anyways. So I don't necessarily need it quiet. I don't need like background noise. I don't really need anything per se. But I'm also used to just kind of reading a couple pages at a time, if that's like all I can do. Until obviously everyone kind of goes to bed and it's nighttime, it's quiet. You know, then you can, if I'm in the mood, like, you know, I'll read before bed like a lot of people and stuff. But, you know, generally, my environment is pretty crazy. Now, as far as like optimizing it, it definitely is like, you know, taking advantage of the nighttime stuff per se. You know, after everyone's gone to bed, I just stay up and like read. I don't necessarily always have like a specific place, you know, whether that's in bed, at the table, on the couch, or anything. It's just kind of like where I happen to like be and stuff. But I will say one thing that I find helpful is not forcing it. Like, don't like feel like you have to read every day kind of thing. So like optimally for me is, you know, when I'm not stressed about getting like other stuff done. Like for example, like here in the springtime and sometimes in the fall, right? Like the day, like I'll wake up and, you know, after work or if it's a weekend or whatever, you know, it's a gardening day. Like, you know, gardening is the focus. Stuff like that. That's just like kind of a big aspect of like my lifestyle and things. So I don't end up like reading every day. And I also put, I guess this really, I'm not really selling the whole reading thing I'm feeling in this video very much. I did put like discipline over motivation per se. So on like, you know, your environment influencing your focus and stuff. Instead of feeling like you always have to have like the kind of the perfect setup and be like motivated to read something or whatever, you know, if you just make it part of like your lifestyle and just have, you know, you have books around, you have like more opportunities, even if they're not like, you know, 100% optimal or perfect or whatever, you'll like utilize them more. Like I said, I don't know, this might be just more for me. You know, I'd rather read 3 or 4 pages 5 or 6 times over the course of the afternoon or the evening and get 30 or 40 pages done that way, rather than telling everyone, you know, don't bother me for like an hour or whatever. You know, this is not practical. It's just not what's gonna go like kind of happen. So I just kind of felt like, you know, it's like working out, right? You're not always in the mood to work out. You're not always in the mood, like you don't always have like a perfect setup. Like I work on the garage sometimes, and if it's like, you know, like for example during COVID, right, during lockdown, I didn't have a gym to go to, and I live in Maine, and my garage is not heated, and it's not fun working out when it's like 20 degrees outside. But like I said, if you make it part of like your lifestyle and everything, the discipline sort of just takes over, and you don't need everything to be kind of like set up and perfect and everything like that. But I will say, but as far as like influencing your focus because of your environment or whatever, reduce it, and easier said than done, reducing my work stress, and I assume that's for a lot of people, reducing like life stress or work stress or whatever. I feel like that just kind of always bleeds into anything else you do, your interactions with others, you know, your reading, your other hobbies, whatever it happens to be. So like the more just your baseline stress level, the lower it is, the better you're just going to be able to do things that you engage with, like reading, any different hobby, stuff like that. Like I said, that's a lot easier said than done. Yeah, I kind of, I'm like looking back on it, I don't even know if those like answered the questions, but we're just going with it. So number 3 here is, what methods do you use to retain and recall information from what you've read? So I feel like, especially with nonfiction, but I assume with like similar authors or reading like the corpus of an author and stuff, it's probably pretty similar, is reading books that are on like the same theme or that are similar, like not necessarily consecutively, but kind of, you know, within a reasonable time frame. Like for example, I showed that bee book, right? I've probably read 6, 7, 8 books on bees, and yeah, like not every single fact I learned in that book is brand, you know, I'd say the majority of it probably wasn't like brand new or new to me or whatever, but I'm able to the more you read it, the more you kind of learn the same thing over and over in a way. you kind of just like retain it better, if that makes sense. But they're always usually from like different lenses, different perspectives, things like that. Same thing kind of with like a lot of my history reads and stuff, right? You know, I can read a book on, you know, the fall of the Roman Republic, and then I read a book on Julius Caesar, and then I read a book on Cicero, and then I read a book on, you know, Mithridates and Pompey, whatever. It's all like in the same time period and everything, but you're kind of getting a lot of different perspectives and facets on the situation. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the broad strokes are going to be the same, but you're going to keep like kind of, I don't know, polishing that I don't know why I had that like metaphor stuck in my head, but you're just kind of like polishing it more and more, and I think as you do that, it just kind of like shines brighter, and you can just like kind of recall it more easily. I don't know if that made a whole lot of sense either, but I think it did. Now, another thing that I do, especially with like my nature stuff, but history stuff as well, is talking to other people about it. Like, I'm lucky to have a couple friends that do read a little bit, but even people that don't read, like, you know, I bring up environmental stuff all the time. And as you talk about it, you have to, like, you know, not necessarily arguing or debating or whatever, but if you're just having like a discussion and stuff, you know, you need to just recall things. And I think the more you do that, the more, I guess, natural it becomes. Or I guess if you can make it natural, you're going to retain it quite easily. So I guess that's probably my biggest advice for that. Just for another example, I got this book over here. And we were talking about, why were we talking about, like, native wildflowers and stuff with gardens and like landscaping and all that kind of stuff. And I've read here, let's see, lupins. Let's see, Maine is pretty well known for lupins. However, most people don't realize that the lupins we have in Maine, 99.999% of them are just like kind of the invasive western broadleaf lupins, and not our kind of native sundial lupin, which occurs in New England, but it's probably practically extirpated like in the state of Maine, which is really sad. So like I said, I kind of, you know, I just learned that just from like reading through like different things when I was like, reading up on different like wildflowers and everything. You just kind of like strike up a conversation about it. I don't know, like I'm just trying to think of like an example that was like a couple weeks ago about something like that. And then one other thing, I do want to read like a little kind of passage, just because it's kind of special for me, like with like a lot of my nature reads and stuff on you know, what is it, like retaining our information and stuff, and why it's important. And this book is The World of Northern Evergreens by E.C. Pilu. And this is, I don't even know what you'd call this. It's just kind of like a little handbook on, I guess, like coniferous forests, and not necessarily the boreal forest, but like just kind of boreal and coniferous forests and stuff. But there's like, it's a little bit of a field guide, but it's more like just biology and kind of like the life science behind it and everything. But just want to read like a little passage on like kind of what I think about a lot now when I read like nature stuff. Let's see. So learning to identify the different species of coniferous trees is only a beginning. Once you know the trees, many things can be observed if you know what to look for. There is, however, a world of difference between seeing and interpreting. The ability to interpret is the hallmark of the true naturalist, and developing that ability is one of the pleasures of being a naturalist. The well-informed naturalist understands and enjoys 1,000 things that the uninformed one does not even notice, and the more people who understand and enjoy the woods, the more there will be to protect them. So I'm like a big believer, like I do identify a lot of like plants and animals and stuff, but a lot of times if you can give like a name, whether it's the Latin binomial or like just kind of the common name, you know, it's not just a flower, there's not just a tree, it's not just a butterfly, whatever, you know, if it's, you know, the morning cloak or red admiral or whatever, tiger swallowtail, whatever it is, right? If it's a thing, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think, like, if your park is gonna get like, you know, paved over for something, right, and you got a lot of those animals or insects or I know insects, I don't know why I said that, plants and stuff. If you give names to things, they become much more personal, they become much more real, they become more important to you. And some of it's conscious, some of it's subconscious and stuff. But like I said, instead of just, oh, those are some butterflies up there, you know, oh, those are, or like, for example, dragonflies, like one that I kind of want to do like some citizen science stuff on if I get the chance to, is the shadow bog hunter, right? It's not just a little like a you know, a diminishing population of dragonflies. You know, it is the shadow biopter, you know, and it might not be there like later on if we just keep destroying the habitat down east. So I don't know, that always like resonates with me, and that's part of what even was the question? Oh yeah, retain and recall information. So that's I guess I don't know, maybe that wasn't super related. I feel like I'm really struggling with this video, like kind of it's connecting in my head. But anyways, number 4, how do you approach difficult or challenging material? So this one's actually pretty straightforward. I don't really do a whole lot of, you know, anything different. Even if it's like a difficult history book, you know, to me it's just like a history book. Like, I just gotta be like open to be learning more. But I will say with certain things, you have to, I would say, just be ready for whatever the topic is, if it's a difficult topic. So I got like a handful of books here, just like as examples, just to kind of be like kind of ready for. So here's like one I'm gonna review pretty soon here. It's The Unclaimed: Abandonment and Hope in the City of Angels by Pamela Prickett and Stephen Timmermans. This is all about when a person passes away and no one claims the body, and literally just all the, you know, the hurdles and jumps and everything that body goes through, you know, after the person has died, all the different like social workers that are involved, the different state agencies, things like that. You know, it's a difficult topic. You know, the people that either had no one, right, for example, or the people that could have claimed them but, you know, just couldn't and didn't. You know, that's a difficult topic to read about. So it's just prepared. Like, so if you're in a certain certain frames of mind, whether because of like life circumstances and things like that, you might not want to read that book at a certain time, if that makes sense. Just like another one, Poached here, Inside the Dark World of Wildlife Trafficking by Rachel Love Newer. It's a topic I want to read about, but it's gonna make me angry as like I read about it. You know, just like, you know, pangolins and rhinos and different like lizards and stuff, all kinds of different illegal trades kind of going on, or animals getting captured and sometimes just sold off or killed for, you know, their freaking keratin or whatever. It's gonna make me angry. I have to like know that. I know that going into it. But as long as you kind of like are aware enough to like realize that and don't let it like consume you and stuff, if that makes sense. Kind of the same thing a lot with my nature ones, just in general, like a lot of nature books. Like this is like one I'm reading right now as well, Hurricane Lizards and Plastic Squid by Thor Hansen, and this is all about animals contemporarily evolving with like climate change and stuff, you know. And some animals just don't have the plasticity to kind of like roll with the punches and everything. And it's doom and gloom. There's so much doom, like this whole wall of books here, half of them have to have like some chapters in there of doom and gloom. It's just like the nature of the beast at this point in time, unfortunately. So it's just be like aware of that ahead of time. So if you know you won't be able to handle it for whatever reason, probably try to avoid doing it at that point in time. Don't avoid the hard books because of it, but just be like ready for them, mentally like prepared for them. Okay, number 5. What does note-taking and annotation play in your reading process? So, yeah, I don't. Well, I'm trying. For the past like 2 months, I've been trying. I've tried tabbing. I've tried kind of like writing in the lines and stuff. It just doesn't work. I haven't before, but I did see a couple of videos on it. I can't even remember if it was just a bunch of like kind of weird like meta videos on people taking notes, and I've always like wanted to, and I used to a long time ago. There was like a time period when I had like a history website, and I found like my Luke Term book on it. You know, notes on ships and seamanship in the ancient world, just different like notes on it and stuff. I don't even know what half the history of Roman sea power before the Second Punic War. You know, brief history. I don't know why a Norman book is in there. The Roman Republic, stuff like that. So I have like some old like notebooks where I did, but it was more just like writing the page number and like the fact per se. Whereas I want to be a little bit more. I don't know exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm just going through trial and error at this point. So if you have a good reference for like learning how to note take properly, I feel like either take so few notes is pointless, or take too many notes and it's not helpful. What I even got my like really nice like Oberon design one. I think this is like my vague like philosophy one, but I've only got like 1 page of stuff on it since I started the philosophy Discord and everything. But what I found that has helped me the most is I'm using this one just to write like a 1-page spread after like I finish a book, if that makes sense. Even if it's not like a full like 1 page or whatever, just a couple paragraphs on like what I read after the fact. I'm finding that's the best thing for me. Just like I said, I've tried a whole bunch of different things, so I don't know what to tell you. Don't listen to me on this question. That's not helpful at all. Oh man. Number 6. How do you balance reading for pleasure with reading for personal or professional development? So I put I read, you read for pleasure first, and I feel like if you read for pleasure, pretty much everything else will fall into place and just kind of like follow after. I have never had to like read specifically for work, but I think the creators of the tag are talking more about like developing personally and stuff. But I do feel like I'm primarily a nonfiction reader. Like I said, a lot of my nature books, I'm like reading it to like enhance my own like experiences, like when I'm outdoors and things like that. But I do feel like all the books I pick are because I want to. Like, I'm never going to read a book, I don't think, just for the sake of it, which is probably why I don't read a lot of, the canon books, the literary canon or the classics and stuff. I just, like, I know everyone gets stuff, like, out of it. I just feel like I would spend my time better, like, reading my nature books and stuff. I don't know, that's a hard one for me. Like I said, I just, everything I read, it's like organic, It's like, for example, not like dragonflies. I was talking about dragonflies earlier, right? If I want to learn more about dragonflies, I will pick up like some of my dragonfly like monographs or field guides or whatever, read on them. I got a couple like kind of just natural histories on dragonflies, or whether it's birds, I got like kind of popular science books. I got like kind of the more harder science books. Don't know if that makes a lot of sense either. Just anything I become curious in, right? I just want to read about, if that makes sense. But it's just totally kind of like organic, just like kind of what I'm interested in at the time, or something kind of comes up or whatever it is. I don't know if that helped a lot. There was a couple books, like for example, the Unclaimed book that I showed earlier. It's kind of like tangentially related to like social work and stuff. So I felt, on a couple of things like that, I would read just to kind of like fill in some knowledge gaps, I guess. So I guess those ones wouldn't necessarily be for pleasure per se, though there is a kind of a sense of pleasure in like learning more and understanding things better. I feel just you don't have like giant gaps in like your knowledge base and everything. So in a sense, it's like indirectly pleasurable. But yeah, I will say though, there is a few books I read purely for pleasure and have like no educational stuff. Like I do read a little bit of fiction, a very small amount, but it is like the most, and I mean this in like the nicest way possible. It's like the most lowbrow genre fiction ever. It's literally like tie-in books for Warhammer 40k, and Age of Sigmar. So, and but it's literally just because I have friends that enjoy that. I enjoy it and stuff, and it's just like kind of builds on the lore and everything. So, but I feel like sometimes like those pure pleasure books, almost like dessert, right? You can't just like, and there's no shame. That's what you do read. I know there's a lot of like 40k people that just read. That's the only thing they read is like the novels that tie into the story and everything. But I just feel like they're a little bit too savory. I would get bored with it, like just reading them over and over and over and stuff. All right, number 7. I don't even know if I answered that question at all. Let's see. What are we doing? Number 7, what is the importance of setting reading goals? Alright, so I do set reading goals. I even have a reading goal video. And I did write down, do goals that are like not numbers based. See, what I do is I say, I want to read 52 books a year, one for each week of the year. Because I know I can hit that. There's no pressure. That's just like it's just an easy layup, right? So you almost get like the little endorphin boost when you hit it, because it's not like really a big deal and stuff. But I do have like goals, and like kind of subconsciously, like when I'm participating in Historathon and stuff, a lot of my goals now are more like pushing my boundaries and getting myself out of my comfort zone and stuff. Just for example, like in Historathon, or for Historathon, kind of in a way, I've read a lot of books that I normally would never ever read but I kind of read just for fun for that sort of stuff. Just for example, here's like 3 giant books right here that I read a lot of history, but generally I kind of taper off after like the medieval and Renaissance periods, like 1500s and later. Like I just don't read a whole lot per se. But like this year I've already read The Pursuit of Power, which is all about the long 19th century. Let's see, The Soviet Century: Archaeology of a Lost World by Karl Schlogel, which is all about social life for people under the USSR, the Soviet Union, which I never would have dreamt I would ever read, years ago. That would not be something I would even like consider. And then even some like American history, which I've read only like, geez, as an adult, I probably only read like maybe 5, 6, 7 books on American history. Eric Larson's Demon of Unrest on the beginning of the Civil War. And like I do feel like pushing your comfort zone on things, like it's really good to read things and you enjoy. And that's probably like the best advice I think anyone can like actually get with like reading, is read something that you actually like reading about. But to a certain extent, if you're not a professional reader, but if you're like I don't even know what if you read lots of stuff, I think it is good to read lots of different things. But especially like my history, I always felt like, I should just kind of push my boundaries. There might be things to discover that I actually really enjoy reading about that I wouldn't know unless I try. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Same thing with my philosophy reading. I started a philosophy Discord like a month ago, and I like never would have dreamt of like picking philosophy and stuff back up. But after talking with a couple people in the bookish community and stuff, and it just like kept popping up, and I kind of just decided, why not make like just a group of people like to read philosophy and stuff. And we're like this month we're doing Plato Symposium and stuff, and we've had really great conversations and things like that. So I would say like definitely push your boundaries, and they don't have to be like I said, a number goal. They can be like, one of mine was participating in more bookish events. I even created one now, like I said, with that Discord server. So I feel like numbers can be stressful, whereas like more abstract things don't necessarily have to be. I don't know. And I do feel like for people that are kind of newish to reading too, having goals that you can like achieve just feels really good, right? It's just like the carrot, like when you reach it and stuff. So there. And number 8, what are some strategies for overcoming reading slumps or lack of motivation? So I wrote a couple things down. One is kind of going back to that discipline over motivation stuff, right? If you become disciplined enough where it's like part of your lifestyle, you probably won't get a whole lot of reading slumps. But if you do, I actually wrote down a couple practical things so I can actually say something. I would definitely say start a whole bunch of books. Just read the first couple pages. If it doesn't strike you as something like really cool, really great, or awesome, or whatever, just put it to the side for the time being. Just try to find something that sparks something in you. That way it can catalyze and you can just go into it and stuff. So I would say start a whole bunch of them. But also start plan on maybe some like shorter books. It's a lot easier to pick up I don't know. So instead of reading Herodotus, which is usually like 700-800 page, primary Greek text, right? Here's like the very short introduction to Herodotus. I don't know. Like, there was like probably the most obscure example. I just grabbed like the top 3. I got Knowledge, the Antarctic, and Herodotus, right? But they're all like 100 pages, right? So you can bang that out in a weekend pretty easily if you wanted to. I just find those have always helped me the most, is like reading short books. I think is definitely the go-to thing for me. Like if I ever feel like I'm, I don't know, maybe not reading as much as I previously had been in the recent past or what have you. So there you have it. I feel like that was the most windy video I've done in a long time. But I do think it is kind of good to think about our reading kind of like in a more abstract way. Because you can always improve with everything. Like, doesn't matter what it is, even reading. You can always just do better, and there's no reason not to do better. Especially if it's something you enjoy. If it's something like, if reading is your hobby, why not make the most of it? I feel so. There you have it. That was my rendition of the Read Smart tag. I'm going to tag a couple people. I see this dude, Read by Fred. I love his content. Emma over at A Cup of Books. She reads a bunch of really, really cool nonfiction. John over at Nicholas of Autrecourt. Super, super intelligent guy. Definitely think you should do that as well if you get a chance to. And leave a comment down below for any advice you have on note-taking or anything I've said. Like I said, I feel like this one's just kind of gone on and on and on. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. And always remember, whatever you read victoriously.